What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Emerson Latzia holding it down at the DraftKings studio in Boston. We got a great show for everybody. As always, download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. The best of GoJo and Golic from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern, wherever you hear VSiN on the radio. Fun one today. I, for one, am most excited to talk about our nation's premier non-Kendrick Lamar hater. But Emerson, what else do we have coming up on the show today?
All right, dude. Lakers looking for their 7th head coach since Phil Jackson retired in 2011, and we got a little Special K going on. The legend, Coach K, helping the Lakers coaching search. We'll tell you how. Nate Tice of Yahoo Sports, former UCF quarterback, gentlemen, joining us because it's never too early to talk about the 2025 draft. And how about a live report from Valhalla? Happy PGA Championship Eve to all those who observe. ESPN's Matt Barrie will join us to break it all down. Storylines galore. First things first, though. GoJo, the Stars coming out for Game 5. Jokic and Brunson both hitting the 40-point mark last night, giving their respective teams a 3-2 series lead. Starting with the Joker, though, who could not be stopped, not even by Defensive Player of the Year, Rudy Gobert, who guarded him all game, and I say guarded in air quotes, GoJo.
It was one of the best performances on a basketball court I have ever gotten the chance to see. And I felt bad because this game was the late game. Halftime of this game, the second half of this game, started after midnight on the East Coast, which is insane. I don't know how you people do it. I'm assuming that means a majority of people that weren't Timberwolves fans east of that time zone probably didn't see much of this. And Dad, that's a shame because what they saw last night, and I want to make this very clear, is the best basketball player in the world. There are no ifs, there are no ands, there are no buts. That is the MVP of the league, and that is the best basketball player on planet Earth that we got to see absolutely try to ruin the reputation of 4-time Defensive Player of the Year Rudy Gobert in one single outing.
Yeah, we got to see it because luckily we live on the West Coast. I mean, you're right. I mean, it's crazy. Starting games that late, absurd. Just crazy. I mean, and I know they were two obviously Midwest to games. Well, no, I'm sorry. What am I saying? This was in Denver. They're going back to Minnesota. I don't understand it. I don't understand how that happens. I don't understand. We'll hear people complaining on the Midwest and the East Coast all day about it, and I get it. But we also find out this year, as most years when Joker wins the MVP. The MVP of the league is better than the defensive player of the league. That's what we come down to, right? And we knew that going in. I mean, if they were matched up. Now, there are a plethora of reasons that people can give out there to go on Rudy Gobert's side of why it wasn't as bad as everybody would say of Rudy just getting smacked down. But it's kind of like, unless you dive deep into listen, the bottom line is he ruined him even one-on-one, but there are circumstances. It's like in the NFL, Mike, when we're calling a game, when people see the closest person to a receiver, they say automatically it must be his fault. When a lot of times it's not. You know, there's the scheme of the defense, and there are things that go on. Listen, Rudy Gobert is a heck of a defensive player. He's not very well liked, and I think that adds to it. So I think people like when they see him get smoked. And anytime he gets pulled away from the rim toward the three-point line, that has a tendency to happen.
Yeah, listen, Rob Perez, Worldwide Wob on Twitter, did the great job of trying to explain, hey, this is how the Timberwolves' defensive structure works, and Rudy Gobert works better as a guy that's allowed to roam and play center field, but when Cat gets into foul, there's all these qualifiers on it. And you know what I don't want to hear when we're talking about a guy who's in historically great company when it comes to winning Defensive Player of the Years is a bunch of qualifiers. Dad, you know what you just mentioned there? Perfect example. Hey, when you got football and you got a one-on-one matchup, play an offensive line. If you got someone going against Myles Garrett, right, you're trying to do a lot to game plan for that player. But at the end of the day, when you got a dude, let's say a Trent Williams on one side, you know what you pay him tens of millions of dollars to do? Block that guy one-on-one in critical junctures of the game because that's what he's capable of here. And yet the minute Rudy Gobert is apparently put on an island with Nikola Jokic, yeah, we know Jokic cooks everybody. Everybody doesn't have 4 Defensive Player of the Year awards, so we're allowed to laugh a little bit on the other side and point at this thing. Because the other funny part about this, Dad, is Rudy Gobert, was perfect from the field last night, actually gave them offensive output. And if you look at this game, I think that's the fascinating part for me is the Minnesota Timberwolves in the non-Anthony Edwards edition, because Denver decided early on, defensively, we are going to continue with our idea of blitzing Anthony Edwards, throwing two bodies at him every time he gets the basketball and making him give this thing up. And Karl Anthony Towns, from the jump of this game, was aggressive offensively and did his part trying to rebound from a poor game the other night. And as we mentioned, Rudy Gobert was even able to give you some stuff offensively there. But defensively, it was a total non-compete against the best player in the world last night, who every chance he get, whether it was from three, whether it was down on the block, was giving man buckets. And believe me, if anyone was going to make sure you knew about that, it was president of the hater, the biggest hater in the non-Kendrick Lamar category, Draymond Green on Inside the NBA, filling in for Charles Barkley, hating his whole ass off, reeking of jealousy over Rudy Gobert winning yet another Defensive Player of the Year. It was fantastic.
The big Frenchman is sitting on that podium speaking his native language. We need to do this. You need to get a stop. It ain't we. Karl Anthony Towns is actually doing a pretty good job when he's on Joker. It's you, my man, that's getting cooked. So it's no we. Now, yes, you do need help from the other guys, but on some of those, help can't help you. Like, you just got to get a stop.
Right. I love that. I love that line. Help can't help you. And you're right. Listen, as we said, there are defensive schemes. If Karl Anthony Towns gets in foul trouble, that can be an issue as well. But for the most part, it's exactly what you said and what I've said about football. Beat your man. Even if you get pulled, I don't want to hear your Defensive Player of the Year, but if you get pulled away from the paint, it's a little troublesome. It's still 7-1 against 6'11". You're not coming out to guard, a 6'5" guard who's way quicker than you. It's a big man coming out to guard a big man. You should be able to do that if you're a Defensive Player of the Year. But is this more let me ask it this way. Is it more of an indictment on Rudy Gobert, or is it more a pat on the back to Joker that said that just how good he is?
Oh, no, listen, we're having some fun right now because you got a matchup that was billed as MVP, and Joker got his MVP last night, so fueled by that. But no, this is about Nikola Jokic. Nikola Jokic, 40.7 rebounds, 13 assists, and 0 turnovers last night. According to StatMuse, he's the second player in NBA history with 40-plus points, 10-plus assists, and no turnovers in a postseason game. He's doing things that most other people aren't capable of, whether it's 40-point games by big men, 40-point games in general in the postseason, which we'll get to with Jalen Brunson also. But, Dad, this was just another one of those coronation nights, as we had Shaq, when the MVP was announced, say to Jokic's face, hey, I think SGA should have won this award. And as Denver, Dad, I think took it very personally through the first couple of games of this series. Oh, hey, we actually have to try now. I think this had been a team that had kind of been coasting for a while. We saw the way they played the Lakers series. We saw how the first two games of this last series went, and they have erased all doubt that they are still the best team in the NBA right now. And when they get humming, when you get Aaron Gordon at the height of his powers, help him bring the ball up so Jamal Murray doesn't have to. Their big adjustment in this series of having their bigs kind of initiate the offense. Everything else that's cascaded since has looked like the Death Star back fully online, and them reinserting themselves as the championship favorites without a question of a doubt.
I agree. Listen, I think Anthony Gordon has been that X factor in this for sure, and what he's been able to bring. And he shot 50% last night, going 7 of 14. 4 for 4 from the line. But, we talk about the giant man matchup because we love it. Just like home run races in baseball, we love big men matchup in the NBA. But this, again, boils down to give Denver credit. They threw everything in Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards in the first 4 games had averaged 33 points a game, right? So in this one, obviously it was a different story. He's held to 18 points, 5 of 15, 1 of 5 from three-point land. So credit that we credit so much that Minnesota defense when they jumped out to the early 2-zip lead about how their length was just destroying and frustrating Denver, especially Jamal Murray. Well, you got to give Denver's defensive credit on how they came after Anthony Edwards and said, basically, you know what? It's one of those you make a choice. Do you let him go off for 50 and try and get the win, or you try and put the clamps on him and let other people do the scoring? They put the clamps on him. He had a bad night. Like I said, the worst night of the series, and we see what the outcome was.
With their two big lineup.
It was a very clear choice with those guys, and it's similar to the choice you have to make with Jokic is, are you going to let him be the primary scorer, give him one-on-ones, or are you going to try and make sure it's anybody else? And for Anthony Edwards, I'll be curious what the adjustment is, because at some point, even if that's going to be the strategy for this Wolves team to win, he's got to end up being a little bit more ball dominant. I understand making the right play, trusting your teammates, but especially now that it's do or die from here on out, he's going to have to insert himself, Emerson, in a big way.
Yeah, the fact is, I think whoever guards Jokic is going to get destroyed. You could bring back primetime Tim Duncan, and Jokic would chew him up. So with their two big lineup, don't you think they should put maybe like Cat, Naz Reid on Jokic and actually free up Gobert to have a roving impact here? Because whoever is on Jokic has no chance.
They've tried to, but Karl Anthony Towns usually can't keep himself out of foul trouble, which is an issue. I thought Draymond was right. In the limited reps you saw Cat matched up on Jokic, he actually did a fairly good job. What I appreciate most, though, is because you're right. I mean, this is all stuff that the Timberwolves have thought of, but it's still really difficult to execute when you are going against, without question, the best player on planet Earth right now in basketball. I, for one, am just glad, Dad, that Rudy Gobert exists and has done this, because there's clearly something about this that Nikola Jokic is taken personally. Like, whether or not he shows it, Nikola Jokic usually operates like Thanos, cold and dispassionate. But for some reason, I am reminded of the line from Avengers Endgame when he says, I am going to enjoy this part, destroying you and your annoying little planet. Usually it doesn't matter to me, but this time I am going to enjoy it. And that actually seemed to be the case for Jokic last night, who was out here dunking on fast breaks, showing a little bit of emotion. It was an entirely different side of him that for some reason I think this matchup has brought out of him.
Yeah, and he'll never admit it, right? I mean, he's just that cool collective. I like horses and family better than my job, you know. I agree. But the thing is, we're all human. We're all human, and you get those feelings of, okay, I'm going to throw it back in your face a little bit. Oh, by the way, it's a lot easier to do when you're the best player in the league and can get off a little bit on that. But then not say it. Just act like everything is status quo, nothing new. Nothing to see here. I'm the same man, except on the inside you're burning to get back at them. Again, you have to give Minnesota credit for the way they came out of this, but it woke up, I think, Denver. We both think, I think all three of us think Denver is the best team, and maybe not winning at all. Emerson may be sticking on the Celtics. I think Denver's the best team. I think Denver is winning the whole thing here. And sometimes it takes you to get shaken a little bit, right? To say, okay, hey, you know what? time to wake up a little bit. You know, you can do this in all walks of life, right? You look at Notre Dame, the number one seed in men's lacrosse, playing Albany in the first round of the playoffs, a team they should destroy, and they're losing to them at halftime, right? So it's like, wait a minute, you know, so I don't know what Kevin Corrigan's halftime talk was. It was either, guys, you know what you got to do because he's got a veteran group, or he went in there and just laced on them, you know, and saying, what the hell are you doing? But you get kind of a wake up. You know, to say, wait, this isn't what should be happening. We're better than this. And for Minnesota, we all started wondering, okay, do we have a changing of the guard here? The way Oklahoma City's playing, Minnesota's playing, what the Knicks are doing, are we starting to roll over? And then Denver is basically saying, nope, we're still the team to beat.
Well, to that point about the championship odds on DraftKings Sportsbook, the Boston Celtics currently still minus 130 as the favorite to win the NBA title this year. You can get the Denver Nuggets at plus money at plus 275 right at this point in time. So something to keep an eye on for that team. But Emerson, if we're going to talk about marquee 40-plus point performances in the postseason, we probably also need to talk a little bit about Jalen Brunson and the New York Knicks, because my God, I don't know what happens when they go back to Madison Square Garden, but somebody flipped them a sensu bean. They looked rejuvenated.
Yeah, Brunson exploded for 44 points last night, GoJo. Knicks are up 3-2 now in the best-of-7 series against the Pacers. Now one win away from their first trip to the Eastern Conference Finals since the year 2000. Jalen Brunson telling the media after the game how the team approached things entering Game 5.
One thing that I've learned in the playoffs is that one game does not have any effect on the next. And so no matter what the situation is, whether you lose by 1 or lose by 30, and so it has nothing to do with next game. So honestly, once we leave here tonight, you know, this is over with. It's all about how do we prepare for game 6.
GoJo, the Knicks superstar, again, scoring 44 points. So that gives him 373 points through 11 postseason games. The only other players to do that since 1990, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, and Kevin Durant. This guy's on another planet right now.
He's in rare company, Dad. He is a superhero for the New York Knicks. He has become one of the most quintessential New York athletes I can ever remember, with the way that he goes out and just singularly dominates, despite not being the most physically impressive or overwhelming presence there. And while Jalen Brunson absolutely should be the lead for all of these stories here, he needs one more 40-point game in this postseason to tie Bernard King for the most in Knicks history. He's already only one of 11 players with 5 or more 40-plus point outings in a single postseason in NBA history. But the stat for me that symbolized exactly why what happened last night was the fact that with 4 minutes left in this game, so once the starters got pulled because the Knicks were blowing their doors off at the end, Josh Hart and Isaiah Hartenstein by themselves had as many rebounds as the entire Pacers team in 28. Isaiah Hartenstein, who had double-digit offensive boards in that game last night, completely swung the balance of this game, Dad. It was about the Knicks winning the way they had always won, but at a time where we thought, man, if they finally run out of gas. We have learned again last night that especially at Madison Square Garden, there is no such thing as empty for that team.
I agree. Listen, Jalen Brunson deserves the talk. Hell, he shot 19 more times than anybody else on his team. He shot it 35 times. Next up was Josh Hart shooting it 16 times. So Brunson was that guy, but a lot of it's about opportunities, and you mentioned it right there. I mean, let's go even to the end of the game. I know you said with 4 minutes to go, but the end of the game, they out-rebounded the Pacers 53-29. The Pacers had 29 rebounds, and those two had 28. Those two were one rebound short of what the Pacers did the entire game. And you throw in what you said, Hartenstein had 12 of his 17 rebounds were on the offensive side. So that's second chances, more shots for Jalen Brunson. Mike, I can do nothing but tip my cap to these guys. With the small rotation they had, then to lose a couple of guys in that rotation, and to still do what they're doing and make this a blowout where they didn't really have to exert themselves. Now, still, Jalen Brunson plays 43 minutes in this game, and McBride plays 40, Hart 39, so they're still playing some minutes, but not a lot of exertion and pressure at the end for them. So I'm just incredibly impressed with their ability to recharge, plug themselves in, and get it going the next game, because I didn't see him getting out of this series with that bench and that rotation getting smaller and smaller, but kudos to them. I mean, just really, really impressive.
And staying ready for their moment. Alec Burks had 18 points last night. Alec Burks didn't play in the last series. The guy hadn't been playing down the stretch of the season, and yet because of that small rotation, he had to step up. Like, this team is every sports cliche in one. It's about dogged leadership, incredible toughness. You saw Dante DiVincenzo fighting it out with everybody, snarling at folks, getting MSG hyped up here, and then you get Alec Burks being, we always hear about it, hey, being a pro, being one of those guys that's going to be on the bench, you got to be ready for your number to get called. And in a system that had ground a select few guys into dust, we'd heard all about Tom Thibodeau grinding these guys through the regular season, and was it leaving them injured and taxed now? And Tom Thibodeau, like anybody who's ever almost run out of gas with their car and had people point it out and tap the side and said, no, I know my car. We're going to make it to the gas station just fine. Yeah. Tibbs looked at his team and knew, getting back to MSG, they were going to have plenty in the tank to take this thing home. Yeah.
Now you got to get it done on the road,
not only that,
because in Indianapolis, Pacers have yet to lose this postseason.
Yeah, it's impressive what he's done. We talk about running out of gas, but what he does is he has other guys ready. The guys that have to step up, help get the job done.
No doubt about it. They stepped up and got the job done. Like Emerson said, we'll see if they can take this party on the road. I still think the Pacers, too young, too much pace, can ultimately take the series, but the Knicks have proven us wrong at every juncture, so why would they stop now? Coming up next, though, massive news for podcasters everywhere yesterday, getting a little bit of help from old friends. Differently at this point, if you're coming to coach the Los Angeles Lakers at this juncture, other than somebody LeBron James has co-signed and given his approval, given the way this franchise operates right now.
Exactly. You don't think they're already talking with LeBron? If it is a different guy that LeBron, like you said, co-signs that and has a relationship, or at least, agrees with that person being in there, and LeBron's still not going to have a say. This is just a little closer to home with them now having a podcast, because there is the difference. I keep bringing up Steve Kerr. I would love to go back in 2014 and hear what comments were made by current players about that. Now, again, he did have the consulting time with the Suns, and he didn't go to Golden State with a connection to a player there like Redick would have with one of the greatest players of all time in LeBron. So there are differences there. I'll keep you doing the thing. You're right. We talked about Doug Gottlieb being the head coach of Green Bay and still doing his podcast. I don't get that. I don't understand how you could hire somebody and let him keep doing that, and your head coaching job is basically a part-time job. I don't understand that at all, but hey, it's not my decision. More power to him. Do your thing if you can. I would highly doubt that Redick would be continuing doing anything like that if he were to become the head coach of an NBA team.
Yeah, and I guess this is one of those things in terms of guys making the jump without prior experiences. He's not, well, even the media aspect changes some of it, but like Jason Kidd went straight from being an NBA player to being an NBA coach almost the next year. His last year as a player in 2013 with the Knicks, and then starting that next season with the Brooklyn Nets as their head coach. Now, we can debate the success of that, obviously, since it only lasted a year, but I still think this is a sport in particular where guys that are guards, guys that are part of the cerebral core of a lot of these teams, and making that change or transition is something that's a little bit less alien to this sport in particular. And so overall, I don't know, we've seen it. The way JJ Redick approaches the analysis of the sport has always reeked of someone who had aspirations of a little bit more than just talking about it. We've heard him have that conversation about trying to elevate the discourse. Him and LeBron doing Mind the Game was a tangible step there. And ever since then, it's been like, you know what it's been, that podcast ad? It's been like when you see LeBron James at All-Star Weekend flirting with a player that he very much would like to see on his team. We joked about it when the All-Star game was in Cleveland, and him and Steph Curry were just a couple of kids from Akron, and they're palling around like a Rocky Beach montage scene where they're hugging and dapping going up the court, and we're all like, oh, he wants him to come play with him. That's how he wants this to go. Yeah. With J.J. Redick in mind the game, LeBron's asking him about specific coaching situations. They're both giggling because they kind of know what the deal is there, and they kind of know that everyone's reading into it, but they don't care because it's sexy and dangerous and new. And so when this happens, which I'd imagine at this point it likely will, it's not going to be very surprising.
No, it's not. And if there were two guys in the media, now we know Doug Gottlieb had interviewed for that job the previous year, but if there were two guys in media, I thought not only could end up in coaching, but want to be in coaching, it was J.J. Redick and your buddy Dan Orlovsky. I think would love to go be a coach at some point as well. A lot has to do with family. How old are your kids? What are you doing with that? Now, there's a lot of, obviously, other things involved in that. But those were two guys I thought that would easily want to step into the coaching ranks.
Yeah, and I mean, we've seen, I think for Dan, we've seen Adam Schefter report publicly that there's been some nibbles that he's gotten on the NFL front, and with J.J. Redick now, there's also the growing smoke around this. I think he was also rumored to be a candidate for the Charlotte Hornets job before they filled that position. Right. And so this seems to be something that very clearly is moving towards that ultimate goal. And even if it's not ultimately here, which again, it still feels like with everything and all the momentum around this, the Coach K factor just seems like another sign of which way the wind is blowing, that ultimately we're going to get to this point. And it'll be interesting, Dad, because it's not like he's walking into a situation that's ready-made to go and be successful.
No.
There's still a lot of questions about what this Laker has to do roster-wise. Oh, by the way, all of this distracting from the fact that Rob Pelinka has not been someone that's been overly criticized in a process for acquiring or not acquiring the players they need.
Then if LeBron does stay with the Lakers as Redick coaches them, how does Bronny fit into that situation when they draft him?
Or if they do it all at this point, as LeBron James is going through that draft combine too. So plenty to keep an eye on. And as the Lakers turn, Los Angeles' hottest new daytime soap opera.
All right, I think it's safe to say the Falcons surprised a lot of people when they selected Michael Penix Jr. in the first round with the number 8 overall pick. Possibly even Kirk Cousins here, who signed with the Falcons in the offseason, 4-year, $180 million deal, making him a massive investment for the franchise. So is he angry about the Penix decision? He was finally able to address it for the first time yesterday, and here he is on the Bussin' with the Boys podcast.
I just believe that I got to steward what comes my way and control what I can control, which is what a steward does. But a steward doesn't worry about that which they can't control.
Yeah. So it's fair to say Kirk Cousins, the Falcons, there's no beef involved.
No, and I don't think there can be. I don't think it's helpful. Like, we're trying to win a Super Bowl, and it's hard enough. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's hard enough. So let's all be on the same page and let's try to go win a Super Bowl.
You know, GoJo, another question that stood out to me was when he was specifically asked if he still would have signed with the Falcons had he known the team's draft plans, and he kind of offered this fairly pointed non-answer. He said, I don't deal with hypotheticals, so could have simply been telling the truth there, but certainly feels like a carefully chosen answer as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen, Kirk Cousins, I think we heard through, his representatives and the media reports, obviously felt some type of way about this. The fact that he left Minnesota, in some part at least, because he was told there, hey, we're probably going to draft a quarterback and factor that into your plans, and came down to Atlanta where he clearly didn't expect that, Dad. I'm sure the human part of him absolutely felt some type of way about that. But the one thing we do know about Kirk Cousins, and the reason I don't think this story will be sexy for long, unless he bleeps the bed coming out of the gate in the season and is affected by injury or just plays poorly, and now all of a sudden the fire rises a little bit, is he's going to approach this like a professional. That's the one thing Kirk Cousins has been relentlessly, is a diligent professional. He said he texted Michael Penix Jr. on draft night. He certainly said, my job is to help make sure that our room is the best it can be. So he's going to approach this from being both a veteran mentor, but also trying to be the leader of this team in a way that does not put or compromise their season and its potential at all.
I'm with you. He's human, so I'm sure there was a guttural reaction at home when that happened. But listen, we have said he has played the business of football better than everybody, and he has, with the money he's gotten from the business side, and he's being a professional here about it. He also talked about 3 years ago, he was golfing when he was with the Vikings, and Clint Kubiak, who was the OC, actually called him and said, hey, Minnesota's thinking about taking a quarterback. So he, as he said, I understand this is the business, and that's what the business was here with Atlanta. Now, whether people think they should have let him in on that or not, that can be debated. But Atlanta said this is the direction we want to go for the next guy. And it's always interesting, too, of how the starting quarterback, the old veteran, handles it, right? Because you heard him say, I texted Penix, I'll help him any way I can. And we've heard others say, you know what? Not my job. Not my job to bring this young guy along. So I see both sides of it. If you're a young guy, I remember my dad, when I went as a rookie to the Houston Oilers, my dad said, keep your mouth shut and your ears and your eyes open. Learn from the veterans. Watch the way they approach the business, because you can now be, a pro, but that doesn't mean you're professional. So watch the people who have done it, do it. So I do see a side of it where a quarterback may say, or a player may say, it's not my job. I happen to have a guy in Mike Stensrud, who was a nose tackle for the Oilers, who was so helpful, helped me so much, teaching me things, telling me things. But as I'm about to say, if you're a quarterback or any position where you say, I don't owe that player that, I get it. If you're the young player, it's your job to observe, to see how the business is run. Now, if you get an older player that wants to help you along, that's great. I think you had that in Pittsburgh as well. I think it's always a great thing, and that's something that it seems Kirk Cousins is offering to Michael Penix Jr.
Yeah, shout out Ramon Foster, one of the best dudes out there, doing a great job now on the radio in Nashville as well, for holding it down and putting an arm around the rookies every time he got a chance. But you're right. You know what? And this is one of those areas where the positive PR that comes from something like the Netflix quarterback series last year steeps in for Kirk Cousins, where everyone saw and was so smitten with the way Kirk Cousins approached his work and how he was, just a walking Kohl's ad and everything down the list. And I think eventually that's why this story, it'll get interesting all over again when we get to the season again. If he goes out there and plays poorly and there's people that are saying, hey, we drafted the old quarterback in the first round. If we want to get the most out of the old quarterback and our current quarterback isn't getting it done, we probably need to go do that. But until that time, and Kirk Cousins, it sounds like on the injury front, is progressing nicely through this offseason. If all that goes according to plan here, I do think this is going to be a plane without a lot of turbulence on the flight, at least to start, which I'm sure would be a welcome respite for Atlanta Falcons fans who really only know the most violent turbulence known to man inside that organization. Dad, I want to check in with you. How you feeling on schedule release night? You got your big Westwood One show coming up here. It's probably one of your least favorite days on earth. I'm jacked up over here. People are throwing back out that Tennessee Titans schedule release video, the man on the street stuff they did last year. It's getting me all chummed up again. I can't wait to see what new age anime stuff the Chargers have cooked up with Jim Harbaugh as their muse now. I want to know how you're doing, though, because I love all this dumb stuff, and I know you hate this with the fire of 1,000 suns.
Yeah, I keep talking about how much I hate it. Hopefully Westwood One maybe will call and say, you know what, we don't need you to do the show today, but I don't think that's going to happen. I'm doing it with Scott Graham, who I love, so I'm looking forward to that. I would do the weekly preview show with him a couple of years ago and got along great. We'll have some good guests as well to boot. But as far as the actual release of the schedule, even when I was playing, the only thing I looked at is sometimes where would I be playing for weather, and is there anything off schedule like the Monday night game or a Thanksgiving game? Other than that, I mean, it's like one of those things that you build up to this, but we've already seen a lot of the matchups. It would be different if everything was kept under wraps, right? And nobody knew anything until tonight, and all of a sudden, here you go. You got the schedule release. Wow, look at that game, or look at this game, or look what Kansas City's starting out with Baltimore and Cincinnati. Well, we know most of the stuff already. We know the international games.
Dad,
we know all that.
It's like going out to a big dinner. You can't, when you're going out to a big dinner, you can't not eat all day. You got to stoke the flames a little bit. You got to chum the water a little bit here. If you go in, then you're going to get full right away. And you mentioned the international games this morning. We got the full list of the NFL's 2024 international set. And hubba, you know what? The NFL, you're not slick, all right, for pulling this off here. We knew already the Brazil matchup that had been announced a while back of Green Bay and the Philadelphia Eagles. First time the NFL's playing in Brazil, so what do they get? They get a good game. And then you look at the rest of the schedule. London gets the Jets-Vikings. Maybe the Jets are going to be good this year. We'll see if Aaron Rodgers can get through week 1 first. Jacksonville, back-to-back weeks first, playing against the Chicago Bears, which fun, exciting, new quarterback in Chicago. But then you get New England and Jacksonville the following week there. Germany gets the Giants and the Panthers this year. Like, the NFL's not slick. You're new on the block, you get the good game. You're everybody else, you get some good brands there, and we'll see. Hey, maybe Daniel Jones and the Giants rebound some this year now that they've drafted a fast receiver and Malik Neighbors. Maybe the Panthers can revitalize the career of Bryce Young, their former number 1 overall pick, and maybe the Bears will actually do the Houston thing, and that game with Jacksonville will be great, but it's a lot of maybes for the rest of the international slate in a way that we're very used to.
So, see what you just did? You had a discussion about the international games, and tonight when I do this show live, and we have this discussion, everybody can go, yeah, already talked about this, already seen it, already done it. That's my only point. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the schedule release anyway, but when I have to do a show and there's zero surprise to it, I mean, we'll have plenty to talk about. As I said, we'll have guests, but everybody has seen it already. Everybody already knows who they play. Now we're just finding out when. Everybody now knows the international games. Everybody now knows the big games to open up. So to me, that makes the schedule release day lose a lot of steam. That's just me. So, you know what? I'll just carry on as a foot soldier.
Big for booking flights, man, for sure. I know I'm going to Vegas. I'm going to Vegas to see the Jags play the Raiders, I think, in December, dude. Let's make some bad decisions.
That is true.
There you go.
As we've established with the Eras Tour, sometimes going and seeing a game abroad can be a little bit less expensive than going to see one at home at one of these marquee arenas. Coming up next, though, Dad, if you like a little NFL schedule release, you'll love this. College football's opening weekend slate announced yesterday, and there's some juice, baby. There's some juice.
All right, the NFL, guys, not the only football-related scheduling event being released this week. So ESPN announcing yesterday that College Game Day will be at College Station for Notre Dame, Texas A&M, week 1 of the college football season. That's August 31st. It'll cap off the Saturday tripleheader on ABC. So, GoJo, how hot and bothered does this make you here, my man?
Well, hot is the operative word, Emerson, because as anyone's ever been to College Station in August will tell you, it is going to be sweltering there. That stadium is in the middle of nowhere in like a plain and then just rises up out of the ground. So you're baking inside that very, very tall, upright stadium inside there, Dad. Yeah. So all I know is the Notre Dame gold pants generally tend to show sweat stains very, very poorly. And so the only thing that might save these guys is I think they're going to sweat through the entirety of those pants, probably in pregame warmups, and just turn them a darker shade of gold.
You know, way back in the day when I was in Philadelphia and the schedule would come out, you talk about things you look for. I always looked for, when was I going to Arizona? You know, and at what time of the year was I going to Arizona? If it was early in the season, how friggin' hot it was going to be. So, yeah, you think about that stuff, and then you have to try and prepare for that as well. To me, this game is the 6 degrees of separation for Mike Elko, right? The new head coach at Texas A&M was a defensive coordinator at Notre Dame and then was the head coach at Duke, where he coached the Notre Dame current quarterback in Riley Leonard for the last 2 seasons. So, yeah, this is the Mike Elko game and the connections to Notre Dame right now.
Yeah, it is a game with a ton of familiarity and connective tissue. Mike Elko, who's a coach I have a ton of respect for, walking into a situation at Texas A&M where we just saw the tail end of the Jimbo Fisher era, $75 million paid out to get him to go away, these insanely talented recruiting classes that could not translate into wins on the field. I think if anyone's got a good shot of making this work, especially with all the talent you can bring there, it's the Mike Elko, whose defensive scheme, by the way, was the one that really carried Notre Dame through the last decade or so.
Yeah.
After his time on campus, with a lot of the DNA that we saw through that. So he got the most out of that Duke program, and I think he'll do the same here. I just hope he doesn't do it week 1, because both of these teams, especially Notre Dame, it's championship aspirations. It is the outside hope of being able to maybe get to a championship, but at the very least, it is playoff or bust in this expanded season. The rest of Notre Dame's schedule, pretty light for the most part. It really is front-loaded with this matchup on the road at A&M with all these eyes, and we've seen these opening weekend college football games can absolutely be a thing that springboards you or gives you that quality loss that you can try and bank on later on. But if you're Notre Dame, you really don't want to worry about that, Dad. I've put together, Dad, if you would like, a top 5 games of opening weekend in college football, if you'd like to explore this some based on what we saw yesterday, because there are some juicy storyline nuggets out here.
Yes, I would like to hear that, so let's go. What do you got?
All right, here we go. Starting off, number 5 that we've got here is North Dakota State against Colorado. It is going to be one of the later games of this. It is it is the Thursday game. It's starting off that week. North Dakota State at Colorado, August 29th, 8 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. Obviously, the Prime Effect has this in prime time, the opening game. Not surprised there. But, Dad, surprised that anyone, especially a team in the position Colorado's in right now, would sign up to play North Dakota State. Now, North Dakota State has been the premier program in FCS football for the last probably decade, maybe even more. The standard has slipped a little bit in the last couple of years. They've lost more games in the last 2 years than they lost in the prior 6 before that. Matt Entz, who was their head coach, is now, I think, the linebackers coach at USC. So it's a new coach there. It's a lot of new blood. But in general, this program is just a bunch of violent people running power runs down the middle of a defense in Colorado that does not want to be pushed around in this way the way they were last year. It's a team that a lot of FBS schools won't schedule, Dad. So I'm just surprised Colorado, who's in kind of a prove-it mode now in terms of the on-field product, would court this kind of chaos week 1 of their season.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they came out of the gate 3-0 last year. They were the talk of college football, and then reality set in. And now with kind of what's going on with the offseason, certainly some things you kind of raise your eyebrow at with Dion and his kid and the program, you wonder what direction it's going to go against, since Shedeur, the quarterback, is going to be his last year there as well. People that don't know North Dakota State understand what's going to happen in this game if you're a Colorado fan. They are going to run the ball up your gut. I I mean, last year they ran the ball 600 and over 618 times and threw the ball 319 times. So they ran it 300 more times than they passed it. They control the ball usually for at least 5 minutes more than their opponent. Puts a lot of pressure on the Colorado offense in this game to score quickly because they're going to lose time of possession here. And how good did Colorado build up the middle on defense to handle this running game they're going to get?
Yeah, it's going to be violent. Colorado will and should be favored in this game. They should be able to out-athlete them. Should. We'll talk with Nate Tice coming up in about 5 minutes here about Shedeur Sanders and his prospects as a quarterback going into next season. But that one, I'm glad they're doing it, though, because so many teams will not schedule North Dakota State for this same reason, because there's very little upside in most people's minds. I'm glad North Dakota State is getting this kind of platform. We'll see if they can channel that into any win. Number 4, Dad, I have Miami versus Florida. Two teams, first off, that are going to sweat their whole asses off. This is the 3:30 ABC game that opening weekend. Hot down in Gainesville. But two teams in remarkably similar situations where the new coaching staffs have been able to point to a lot of recruiting wins. They've been able to point to a lot of the NIL war chest being built up, but not a lot of success yet on the field with the players. That's translated to Cam Ward down at Miami now. So fascinated to see who can get the engines up and running first out of that group.
This one is kind of coaches doing it in the way of today's world of NIL and the portal, right? And we're going to get to a game soon where there's still a coach in the old ways who wants nothing to do with the portal. But let's see who wins as two teams trying to climb back in, to being in the upper echelon of college football.
Number 3, I have USC versus LSU, partially because it's now the Big Ten SEC matchup with USC making its move to that conference here. USC finally valuing defense. D'Anton Lynn comes over from their crosstown rival at UCLA to be the defensive coordinator there. As I mentioned, Matt Entz, I believe, is the linebacker coach there now. But just in general, they moved on from a longtime Lincoln Riley assistant to try and do that. Post Caleb Williams, we'll see how that goes. And Brian Kelly's LSU lost a Heisman Trophy winner and 2 first-round wide receivers and their offensive coordinator. So while the focus has been on them not wanting to overpay for help up the middle and defensive side of the football, the offensive side, a lot of newness there as they head into this matchup.
But they always get such great athletes on that team. It's just a matter of how quickly they can turn into great college football players. So, and USC, I mean, if they're finally going to take a stand on defense, been a while for that one. So let's see if they can actually prove that one on the field. I think LSU can just out-athlete them. I'll say it sooner or later.
Words are hard. Number 2 is easier. Clemson versus Georgia, a rematch of an opening weekend game we saw in 2021 that ended up 10-3 as the final score, with the only touchdown coming from a Georgia defensive score. That was DJU's first game taking over as the starter post Trevor Lawrence. And Dad, you mentioned it before, Clemson sticking to what Dabo has done, taking 0 players in the transfer portal despite losing plenty there, going up against the Georgia team that, along with Ohio State, basically the co-favorites to win the national championship with the team they've got coming back led by quarterback Carson Beck.
Clemson, a team that went 9-4, 4-4 in the conference. Certainly not what we expect there. I would imagine, Mike, there are the older guard coaches who hope Dabo is successful, saying, see, we can still do it without having to go to the portal and do it the old-fashioned way. But I have a feeling that ain't going to be it. I think you have to adapt or die, and I think Clemson is going to go down the wrong road by not kind of jumping into the way college football teams are built today.
It seems unnecessarily stubborn, but it's still a team that down the stretch of the season got their tires going underneath them a little bit, beat Notre Dame when they came to town late in the year, and certainly reminded people the power on that defense. But fascinated to see, Georgia should be a buzzsaw. I'd put them in pen in the college football playoff and keep it moving if you're doing preseason conversation. And number 1, we've already mentioned, Notre Dame at Texas A&M, plenty on the line, big time I wouldn't even say make it or break it year, but definitely got to make it year for Marcus Freeman and company in South Bend, given the roster they've got, given the schedule they've got, and given the fact that this is an expanded playoff. And for Mike Elko, man, can you get Texas A&M online? All fascinating questions. But coming up next, we talked about Shedeur Sanders. We're going to bring in Nate Tice, who wrote about what he has to fix going into 2024 next.
All right, we got some of the Week 1 NFL lines now available up on DK Sportsbook. So 4 games up so far. This is what has been announced. Chiefs 3-point favorite, though they lost their opener last year. Pretty high total here, 48.5 for the game over in Brazil between the Packers and Eagles. Never too early, though, for Week 1 lines, right? Never too early for 2025 Draft Talk. Special guest joins us now, so GoJo, take it away.
All right, very excited here to talk some ball with our buddy and Yahoo Sports football analyst Nate Tice, kind enough to give us some time here. What's going on, brother? How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you? We're talking about our parents in retirement and traveling. You get the day-to-day of it every day.
Exactly.
You get to hear all of it. I always get to parachute in and out of, hey, Dad, what's going on? Oh, another trip? Sounds good. that is my discussions with my parents is what trip are they doing now to not take care of my son for another day.
that is really the thing, as we figured out, is grandparents a lot more talk than action right now. They're all ready to talk about popping in for childcare until it's actually time to come in here and get deep with the diapers, and then all of a sudden they've got all these grand plans for themselves. Apparently,
no, they're fantastic, and all of a sudden they're just like, that was good. What's my shift? 3 hours? This is a part-time. I signed up for part-time. I didn't sign up for benefits, full-time benefits on this, right? But no, my parents are fantastic, great parents, grandparents. It's great to see them in this stage of their life, especially my dad. He's been tremendous, preferring to be called Pop, which is a new revelation for me. But it's just not the quantity is not what I was expecting, but the quality has exceeded everything. So I do have to make sure I chime that in. Happy Mother's Day.
Yes.
By the
way, we're still in the afterglow right now. Thank you, moms, for all you do.
Love
These
you guys.
criticisms are directed strictly at dads and grandfathers, never mom or grandmother here.
Never.
Or as my mom goes by, Gigi. She was never going to be called grandma,
Gigi.
so Gigi was where she landed.
Yeah, my mom, whose nickname is Pixie. Anyways, she hasn't settled, but I think Granny has become the kind of preferred term. So preferred nomenclature. So we'll see how that evolves over time. But Pop has been designated and done for years now.
There we go. We got Pop and Granny. We got Pappy and Gigi over here. And we have got a lot of football that we want to talk about with Nate Tice certainly as well here. And Nate, I think part of the reason I reached out to you was, first off, you were one of the sickos that days after the 2024 NFL draft already put out your 2025 big board looking at the following draft class. First off, are you okay? Is there something sick inside your head that made you want to dive right into that?
I'm originally from Seattle, and I think it's just that inner hipster in me where it's just you're on to the next thing. Oh, you guys like the 2024 class? Yeah. I've already heard 2025 class's first album. Wait till you guys hear the next one. That's kind of, I think, where it came from. But it's also just Yahoo nudging me to go, have you started looking? You want to get that out? I was like, yeah, sure, I'll put it together. And then, one thing led to another. But yes, next year's class is interesting. A lot of good defensive players. Maybe not so much quarterbacks or receivers, though.
No, and you already have decided to jump into the fray on what's going to be the biggest lightning rod at quarterback for next year, and that is Colorado's Shedeur Sanders, the son of Deion Sanders. You put out a piece breaking him down because in your early top 25 for next year's class, you didn't have him in there. And so I'm sure the response for that has been measured and very sane. And so I guess I wanted to more dive in with you on what you saw there, because I think this is a name and a player that a lot of people obviously know because of the mania and the hype surrounding Colorado. But you dove in, you watched a lot of Shedeur Sanders. And so what did you find from the quarterback when you started looking at a guy with that eye for Sundays and what he might project to be?
I think what I found is a lot of accusations that I didn't watch Colorado last year. And it was how could you not have, especially in September? And that was what I think a lot of people threw back at me was, did you watch the Nebraska game? He didn't have time. Did you watch the Colorado State game? Then coming back, and I was like, oh, I watched those games. Colorado State game, Colorado was one of the most fun college football games last year, period. And one of the benefits of living on the West Coast, it wasn't too late for me to stay up and watch that. But watching Shedeur Sanders and just really, I even last year when he was starting to get some hype and had some production and was starting to maybe look at it as a member of the 2024 class, I looked at him 2-3 games, just keep an eye on him. What do I feel about him? I looked at him more as a third rounder, more in the same tier that I personally had Bo Nix and Michael Penix and Spencer Rattler, more in that kind of second, third round tier, day 2 type of tier quarterback. And this time, you see the discussions, especially from his father, head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes, Deion Sanders, saying that, oh no, he's going to be a top 5 quarterback. He's going to pull an Eli and have that, where he can decide where to go. So what I wanted to do was just like, what is he on film? Everyone can talk. Everyone can say he's this. He can point at stats. So I just like, hey, I'm going to take one deep breath for a week and watch him and study him like he's coming out tomorrow for the next year. The draft was next week. I'm going to study him like I'm already doing. This isn't totally fair because he has a whole nother year to kind of project and get better and all that. So when studying him, I see a quarterback that does some nice things. He has a good arm. He definitely has been coached well. And that is also maybe some of his negatives, is that he can feel a little bit robotic and feel a little bit mechanical when he's in the pocket. Like he's doing the drill work literally, as opposed to just being a little more fluid and a little more playing football out there. So I do think he has good arm strength. I do think that on plays that he's comfortable with, he can progress on those. To me, he lacks a lot of creativity, lacks a lot of ad-libbing ability, lacks a lot of, as a runner and a thrower. I think he takes a lot of sacks, which that doesn't hold up well to the next level. So that is something that I thought in my article that is first and foremost he has to work on, is this feel in the pocket. He works backwards a lot of the time, which is a no-go in the NFL. As you know, as an offensive lineman, the offensive tackles will kill quarterbacks if they just keep drifting backwards, because then the defensive end can just run around them and they just go, well, what the hell? Step up. Step up into the pocket. And that is a huge red flag for me for quarterbacks. This is why I was lower on Malik Willis when he came out, is because it's hard to project that. It's hard to win at the NFL level as a quarterback at any, like, not only just being a good starter, but just starting period, if you do that.
And you mentioned he's got another year to develop, but I'm curious how much of this stuff, as you try and look at what the source of this is, can really be improved upon given what the roster constraints are at Colorado last year. Certainly, you mentioned taking a lot of sacks. That is partially a quarterback stat. There are obviously things quarterbacks can do to help the pass rush, like you mentioned, but we also know that was an offensive line that wasn't talented enough last year and is now hockey line changed everyone and is going to try and microwave a group that thrives on cohesion as much as any in the entire sport. So how worried are you about what he can do to develop these things this year, given all the change that's constantly going on around him at Colorado?
It's one of those where you want to see, when it is clean, how did he operate? And it felt like that he developed a little bit of scar tissue last year. And that's why I watched a lot more Pac-12 games, opponents as the season went along. I focused on, games. Oregon State it's a very good defense last year, and they did some real professional kind of defensive things. So how do you operate against that? And the scar tissue kind of built up where if the first read wasn't open, then he would just start drifting back and kind of wishing something else open. And again, this is fine because he has another year to work on this. It's just that the pocket feel is hard to, it's a feel. It's something that guys kind of have. Guys kind of have that, be able to work from tight spaces, and he will flash the ability to do so. That's why he's not just going, I'm not going on the show going like, he's done. What are we doing here? It's just that he flashes it. It's just inconsistent. And so to really work on that, to me, is comfort level. That's going to come with maybe a better offensive or more conducive offensive coordinator situation, because they flopped him last year. So maybe just a little more comfort in the system. The offensive line, and you already mentioned it was more of a quarterback stat, I thought, than maybe just the offensive line was just garbage at Colorado. It was not good. And I wrote this in my article. It was not even average. I would say it's a below average offensive line, but it wasn't a train wreck. Oh my goodness, he couldn't even get the ball out like ever kind of situation that I thought maybe Caleb Williams was under last year. This is more stuff that I think it's just comfort level in a good situation. So to answer your question a little more shortly than I just did, a little more briefly than I just did, he just needs reps. That's what it is. He needs real reps to just show that's consistent. It's not some special drill. It's not some special thing that he can just do overnight. I think it's just game situations. He just has to develop that comfort. And I think this situation with another year at Colorado, another year at Boulder, another year where maybe they're not cranked up to 15 in September, and then they're like, oh, their adrenaline's going a little too high as a team. So take a deep breath. Will they be able to do that? I have no idea, because this is such an unprecedented kind of situation. So, but that's what I feel to him, is that he just needs a lot of reps to get to the level anywhere close to the level that he's kind of getting hyped up at right now.
So yeah, we're waiting to see if that production can match the name value and all the hype surrounding him in this Colorado program. I do want to take this time to talk about another quarterback in that upcoming class, though, that you put near the top of your board, and a guy that you and I have texted about, in now Notre Dame's Riley Leonard, who spent last year and the last 2 seasons at Duke putting up some good numbers before the injuries kind of took hold last year. What about him excites you, and what should get folks in South Bend excited about what they've got under center this fall?
He's a unique combination of accuracy and athleticism. And those are 2 things. That's how he wins, Riley Leonard, is that he's a really good athlete with good size too. I would say, I don't know what he is probably right now, but in that 215 range, it seems like, but good height. He was a basketball player. That's why I'm excited about him, and why it's not a strong QB class, but he is, if I had to pick one today, is my QB1, but it's not like, what's the opposite of a bullet? It's the QB1 with a donut hole, like next to it, like that. That's kind of, or that's kind of how I feel, like a donut next to it. But he was not groomed from 9 years old, 12 years old to be a quarterback. He is an athlete first that has learned to play quarterback, and that I like that archetype. I'm always bullish on that archetype, especially if they show the natural QB feel, which I think he does. He throws guys open. He's willing to push the ball over the middle. I would say that Duke offense was a little static and was a little tight. It felt like they did a lot of quick game and a lot of underneath throws, which was, I still need to see more out of Riley when pushing the ball. I think he can do it, but like what I was saying with Shadur, it's flashes of doing it, not sustainability, consistent play. But again, that's what you're trying to project. It's like, okay, you do it here. Can you do it 5 times in a game as opposed to once? I think he can with a better situation. Hopefully he's healthy. I know he's gone through the stuff in the spring, but his kind of combination of size, athleticism, natural accuracy of throwing guys open, and he mitigates a lot of sacks because of his combination of size and athleticism and just that feel. So that's why I'm really bullish on him, is that I think that combination with a better system, better surroundings can, accelerate him upwards a lot.
We look at so many of the, especially high-end quarterbacks, everyone chasing what Kansas City found in Patrick Mahomes is these guys that are so gifted, they're willing to take risks all over the place. They're willing to do things a little bit differently. I'm wondering for you how that sort of jives with what we saw, like the decision to pay Jared Goff the kind of money that the Detroit Lions did, a quarterback that sort of represents the exact opposite of that in terms of the physical ability and where he puts the football. Like when you see a team like Detroit, who's had this build to success, all of a sudden give Jared Goff, I think it was $125 million over the first 2 years of that, how you sort of reconcile those two ideas.
I call it Roger Goodell money. That's how much he's made this year. He's making Roger Goodell money now. But Goff is, and I want to say Jordan Palmer had this line. Carson's brother does a lot of great quarterback coaching on the side. One of these QB guru kind of coaches, I kind of roll my eyes at a lot of them, but he's one I do respect a lot of things he does. He had a line that he says Jared Goff is going to be the last quarterback to go number 1 that looks like Jared Goff, that plays like that, is not an ultimate creator, is more of a literal pocket passer. I think everybody has to ad lib and do some stuff outside of it a little bit, but truly tries to win that way, as opposed to, we're going to throw in 4 to 5 design runs for him. I think that is kind of the prerequisite now for a lot of these guys coming through. Stroud might be another version, and Stroud and Goff kind of had some similarities. I think that's the thing, is you see that he might be looked at as capped out as maybe the 8th best quarterback if you're just looking at neutral situations, maybe 6th if you like really are committed to the stats and what he does there. And I consider him, if we're just talking about everybody's in a neutral situation, more that kind of 12th-ish best quarterback. And I think that's where there's kind of maybe that they get paid like that. It's something I've had to break in my brain a little bit. And I think you kind of probably understand this more than most people I'll talk to, is we get so coached up that you have to operate this way, especially for maybe me and you. I'm just sorry if I'm grouping in you here. Maybe not the greatest athletes at our position. But I knew what I could get away with, and I knew what I couldn't get away with. And that's, I knew my ceiling. These guys, some of them don't know their ceiling, and that's good, because I think we get coached up. You have to do it this way. You have to do it this way. You do not make that throw against this coverage. You do not, for you, overset against this. You do not, you can't misstep on this or you're dead. They need room for error. And I think that's why I used to maybe overrate quarterbacks that were, the Scott Tolzien that I backed up at Wisconsin, guys that were perfect in the pocket, 1, 2, 3, boom, boom, ball out. And I've had to almost break my brain and go, I actually appreciate the wild horses more, the Mahomeses, the Josh Allens, the Lamars, because they can do the stuff from the pocket well enough. So actually, I'm underrating them. I would say good or better, but then they can create stuff that those guys can't even touch. So it's really that's the personnel side of me, the scouting side, and then the coaching side. I've had to try to merge my thinking a little bit because that's why you see so much disconnect with coaching evaluations and personnel evaluations. The coaches go, well, he didn't throw that dig against cover 2. What is he doing? And then the personnel guy goes, yeah, then he scrambled for 24 yards. That is just the difference that these guys have. And when you look at the best quarterbacks, it's that's what those guys are doing right now, is that merger of in-pocket play and then the creation athletic stuff. So this is a long-winded way to say, like, I've gone away. I've tried to Billy Bean it a little bit. I'm trying not to scout guys that don't play like me. Like, I don't want them to play like me. I want them to play like wild horses. I don't want them to be a big stiff in the pocket. I want the opposite of that.
I could sit here and talk to you about this stuff all day long here. Cannot thank you enough for the time. Everybody check Nate out at Nate_Tice, doing a lot of great stuff, writing, talking, everything now over at Yahoo Sports, which I know I'm fired up about, man. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. No, this is great.
Dad, Nate was the first one to say it to me in a way that made me really understand how I watch and evaluate players, which is, I don't want anybody who plays like I did, I think is the ultimate thing that I end up noticing. And I've said, I come to sports to generally watch freaks of nature do things that I could never conceive of, but it is interesting to think now that we have the doors opened for the quarterback position to be evaluated in that same way, where before we gatekeeped that. We didn't let players with this kind of athletic profile that you see in the Josh Allens and Lamar Jacksons and the creativity of a Patrick Mahomes into this position. And now that we have, it really does kind of change what you can look for in this process.
Well, yeah, and then what you see, do you buy into what you're hearing? What do you do to improve upon it? Because the things he said about Shedeur, when you're a quarterback, things that quarterbacks can control is how quickly you feel pressure, what you do when you feel that, you have happy feet. And what he said and what you see at times with Shedeur or any quarterback, certainly Shedeur's not the only one, is when you bail backwards. That is always a tough one, especially for your offensive tackles. It makes the job so much easier for a D end or an edge rusher to get around and make a play. So because we were all so quick to put it on the offensive line and say, look at Shedeur, the athleticism, him being able to escape from a bad offensive line. But as is normally the truth, it's not always the offensive line. It's certainly the quarterback sometimes. So, what kind of improvement do we see? Dion has obviously said these, him and Shedeur, they think he's going to be a top pick. At this point, I don't see it. But we also see how the quarterback position could be evaluated by the 6 quarterbacks that we saw go in the first round now, that some go higher than you think they should go. So you're battling those two sides of it.
Yeah, I think last year it's interesting because a lot of the things Nate said and some of the comparison that got made was Caleb Williams. Caleb's just a better athlete than Shedeur Sanders, but also has a better arm. He's got more physically, he's more physically capable. And I think that's the thing. Shedeur Sanders, I got to call a couple of their games. Incredibly tough player. Stood in there and took a lot of punishment at times where that offensive line truly was a non-compete. He is a guy that can absolutely make plays happen, but the more you look at it, he's not extraordinarily physically gifted in a day and age where we're seeing that valued more and more. And so I am fascinated what Colorado's been able to put together around him this offseason, and will it give him a chance to develop a little bit more consistency in his game?
Well, hopefully he gets consistency in the offensive coordinator, which they flip-flopped last year. And you mentioned it in that interview. The most consistent position you need on the field is offensive line, and they're doing a hockey change. So to say you can build that consistency and cohesiveness is going to be very, very difficult to do.
Yeah, to say the least. So awesome stuff there. Again, check out Nate. Does a phenomenal job writing over at Yahoo Sports. Coming up next, though, Valhalla awaits. We talked about Valkyries yesterday, so it seems only right that we would head to Valhalla now, again ahead of a golf tournament with plenty of juicy storylines as we prep for a busy, busy weekend on the PGA Tour with ESPN's Matt Barrie next.
All right, PGA Championship has arrived here, people, and so have tee times for the first day of competition at Valhalla. So Tiger Woods going to go off tomorrow morning, 8:04 Eastern time. Here he is discussing his mentality and the state of his game ahead of round one.
I still feel that I can win golf tournaments. I still feel I can hit the shots and still feel like I have my hands around the greens and I can putt. I just need to do it for all 4 days, not like I did at Augusta for only 2.
All right, and Tuesday we got ourselves Big Dog 2.0. John Daly ripping darts, stealing hearts, a Hall of Fame photo with Tiger Woods, guys being dudes. Speaking of guys being dudes, GoJo, we got another beautiful guest standing by.
We do. Very excited to head down to Valhalla and check in with our buddy Matt Barrie, hosting SportsCenter. Down there from the course this week, going to be on some of the featured hole coverage as well. And Matt, I'd have to imagine very fired up hearing a goateed Tiger Woods talk about the prospects of a busy weekend for him.
Yeah, how about Tiger just going full facial hair because he knows he can here at the PGA Championship? He said it was because he was lazy. I think he's just trying to establish himself as the ultimate alpha again out here in the world of golf. And I mean, he looks like a free safety with facial hair and a guy that can still send it with as good as any of the players in the world. So Tiger's been fun to watch this week. I anticipate he'll be entertained in the first couple of days of the tournament.
It is amazing that we're talking about if I can walk for 4 days, forgetting the play, if I can actually walk and make it that way. But we know how fans and all of us watching on TV or there react to Tiger Woods. It's such a huge thing. Matt, where are the players in this? Because he keeps showing up and not winning at the majors now. Where is that level of, oh, Tiger is here again?
It's funny because back in the day, and I said this the other day on TV, we were doing some driving range shots of Tiger warming up. And back in the day when Tiger was in his Tiger, I'm going to kill you mode, it was like Darth Vader on the driving range where people would kind of keep their distance. They'd point and look and be like, oh, there's Tiger. But now he's so open with everybody, and the players come up to him and smile with him and hug him. He enjoys playing practice rounds with people. He's being a lot more reflective with the gallery and the people that are coming to see him play. And so he's changed his mindset in that he still comes to compete, still believes he can compete, but he's enjoying the moment more with the younger generation. And let's be honest, anyone who's a world-class player out here, these younger players, all started playing golf because of Tiger Woods. And it really is one of the great things about this sport. In no other sport can you play with the legend that you grew up idolizing. And that's really what's gone on with Tiger here for the past few years.
Certainly, he always brings that aura with the players around him here. But, Matt, let's talk about some of the other big storylines because there's a ton going into this. And Rory McIlroy seems to be taking center stage right now. We'll leave the stuff in his personal life aside and focus on the golf where the last time he won a major was at this course. And certainly the last couple of weeks have been very good to him. Wells Fargo coming off the win there. So do you think this is it? Is this the opportunity for Rory to finally get back into winning majors?
Yeah, not only is this the last place where he won a major in 2014, back in 2014, he came into Valhalla having won his last 2 starts on the PGA Tour, which he's done over the past couple of weeks. And I was big on Brooks Koepka coming into this week. But when Rory won with the way he did at Quail Hollow, which is just overpower a course and overpower the field, it's hard for me to not think that this is the week where Rory McIlroy gets that first major in a decade. This is a bomber's course. The fairways are pretty generous. If Rory has any semblance of his driver, he can get out to an early lead, and let's hope for a duel with one of the other great players. But Rory's game is so good right now. We've been waiting to see him get back to a spot where he's one of the reliable number ones in the world, and it's there. And he's confident. I know the off-the-course stuff has come up, but we've known that's been going on. It was going on, obviously, when he was at Quail Hollow. That didn't affect him there. Didn't affect him the week before. It's all systems go for him, and it's comfort food being here. And look, all of us are suckers for great sports stories. And what a good way to further his legacy than ending this drought at a place from a decade ago and getting back on a major championship run, which I believe he still has left in him.
still will be interesting as we kind of, you heard the rumblings of the possibility of divorce. To have it just come out a couple of days ago publicly, we have no idea, and it's not even worth getting into how that could affect somebody. We have no clue how it would now being in front of a lot of the public there with them knowing now. So we'll just have to wait and see. How about the other thing we always talk about in majors, because the live players are allowed to play in it, John Rahm saying he still feels like he's part of both tours. Does live even come up anymore when you get to these majors, or are we past that?
It's only coming up right now because of the ongoing negotiations, and it's getting asked in press conference, and Tiger's saying we're negotiating. There's been movement, but there's been setbacks. And so from that perspective, I think from a business perspective, it comes up. But where I think the conversation died was a year ago, amongst the players, that is, in terms of this back and forth. I think it died when Brooks Koepka won the PGA Championship a year ago, because now the players on the PGA Tour are like, well, wait a second. These guys play less tournaments. They're playing different tournaments. They're playing 54 holes, and they can still come out here and win major championships, which is what Brooks did, which changed the math for all of these guys to begin with. And so I think amongst the players, there probably could be some rumblings. But the fact of the matter is, you got to get through Brooks. You got to get through Bryson DeChambeau. You got to get through John Rahm. You got to get through some of these world-class players that went over there. Cam Smith is another guy. And so I think once we start playing tomorrow, it's just world-class player against world-class player against Valhalla Country Club, and that's how it's going to be for the next 4 days.
Speaking of world-class players, we've gone a long time into this segment without talking about the world number one and Scottie Scheffler. Him and his wife finally welcomed their new child into the world. I know we've been waiting on that since the Masters. So any baby hangover we anticipate for Scottie Scheffler now that he's been sleeping on what everyone's taken the pictures of, the dad hospital bed of the chair with the pillow that he's likely been spending a lot of his life on.
Yeah, we finally got that blue puff of smoke that we got the royal baby. Look, he's wired differently. I don't think there's any reason to believe that there could be some rust. It's been 3 weeks since he played competitively, but he's also a stride above everyone else in the world right now. Walked with him yesterday for a bit. We had him on our practice show yesterday. Watched him play a little bit, and he's still world class. And I think maybe if he can win the Masters with the mindset of at any given moment, my wife Meredith could be having our first child. Now that the child's here, there's kind of probably that sense of relief that part of it's over. I would anticipate Scottie by Friday, you'll see him. It's going to take 18 holes for him to get back into competitive shape. And his 18 holes, not in competitive shape, or as good as anyone we've ever seen. I think he'll be just fine. And I really do, guys, based on what we see coming in with Scottie having won his last 2 starts, the Masters champion, Rory McIlroy and Brooks Koepka, having all 3 of them win their last starts and being major champions, I think we're set up for one of the great PGA championships we've seen.
Only about 30, 40 seconds left, Matt. I'm wondering, are we getting to the point where it's Scottie Scheffler against the field like it used to be Tiger Woods against the field?
Yes, and the odds makers say just as much. He opened up at plus 350. I think it's plus 375 right now. And the next closest person is Rory at plus 700. So that says to me, and those are all Tiger-like odds based on what we saw in Tiger in his heyday. So we're already there. And if he wins again, we're going to be there for a long time.
Like Matt said, setting up for an all-time weekend at Valhalla, and that's where you can check out Matt Barrie as part of ESPN's great coverage of the tournament coming up this weekend. Matt, we appreciate it, brother. Thanks so much.
Miss you guys. You bet. Anytime.
Thanks, Matt.
Absolutely. Miss you too, buddy.
You know, Mike, you can always tell a pro, because we've all done shows or hits from hotel rooms. You can always tell the pro when they have the bed in the background that the bed is made, right? So that's always a professional move there. So Matt's right there at the top.
I was going to say, man, golf, college football, you want dynamic. This man is a chameleon, but one thing is going to be sure. The shot is always going to be A1. The hair is going to be on point. He's ready to go and dialed in for an incredible weekend of golf. And I know we're excited. You mentioned the tee time. Tiger Woods tees off 5 minutes into our show tomorrow. God help us.
Yes.
Like most people, when a tournament of this magnitude goes, productivity is about to take a hit. So the first hour of GoJo and Golic tomorrow are going to be very suspect.
Diana Taurasi tried to warn WNBA rookies, including Caitlin Clark, trash talking really the past few weeks, saying the WNBA ain't college. We are grown-ass women. And Clark's debut last night was definitely her welcome to the W moment, thanks to Connecticut's stifling defense. GoJo, the league's top overall draft pick, finishing with a team-high 20 points, and a WNBA debut record of 10 turnovers. Here she is following her debut.
Yeah, I think obviously I'm disappointed, and nobody likes to lose. Like, that's how it is, but I don't think you can beat yourself up too much about, one game. I don't think that's going to help this team. I don't think if, no matter who it is on this team, nobody can do that with how they played, and just learn from it and move on. And, I guess I'm just excited for Thursday to get back home and have our home opener. And, I thought it took me a little while to settle into the game. I thought the second half was a lot better, minus some of the turnovers, but just getting more comfortable, and that's just going to come with experience and getting to play with these girls. And the more games I play, the more comfortable I'm going to get.
Yeah, definitely took her a while to settle in. That was a scoreless first quarter for her. She's going to debut in front of her home fans when the Fever return to Indiana to play New York on Thursday, GoJo. And don't look now, but some are already calling her a bust.
Oh, it's not some. That's you in our text message chain yesterday, Emerson.
Yeah. No.
I don't know. Some is a really interesting spelling of your name in my phone book, but we'll leave that for another day here and instead say, Dad, you know what? This is, I think, a good juncture, as a lot of people are now going to descend upon the WNBA that have not been around the WNBA before, have not supported this league or watched a bunch of this league before, that we probably need to listen to the people that have been around here for a while. And while Diana Taurasi and some of the comments may have come off with a little bit of an edge, part of it was also the benefit of experience, because lest we not forget, it was not that long ago that these rookies heading into the W were all playing their college basketball season. We talk about the grind that NFL players go through after their season, getting ready to go through the combine, going through the offseason program with really no break and no true offseason before their year. Multiply that tenfold for the quick turnaround here in the W, and you get one of the factors that I think leads into a performance where you very much saw, Dad, they went out there and tried to whoop her ass most of last night. And for most of last night, especially Dejanay Carrington, who did a phenomenal job as one of the primary defenders on her, smothering Caitlin Clark, who didn't get her first basket until about a quarter and a half into this game. It was a reminder that the circumstances have changed drastically, and it is truly an adjustment for everybody.
So with every sport that goes to professional, in different sports, there's different things that become the wow factor when you go from college to the pro ranks in something, whether it's speed, quickness, whatever. The one thing that's constant in all sports is now in every game you're getting the best players, where that's not like that in college. How many times have we seen those top picks in football who come from colleges where they barely lose, be a top pick, go to a bad team, and all of a sudden they're at a presser like Caitlin Clark is, talking about a loss after loss after loss, and that's what Caitlin's going to have to get used to. How many pressers the last couple of years about her scoring, but her team making it to the championship game. And now, listen, this was a 13-27 team last year, 27 loss team last year, where the Sun were the opposite, 27-13. The Sun are a better team than Indiana, and one player wasn't going to turn the entire thing around. Plus, every game you're going to find someone and find players, where the talent is more equal, and it's going to make your game harder. So yeah, she struggled. We can come out of her debut and say she set a record, which is something we're used to saying with Caitlin Clark, but unfortunately it's not a bad record. And this was 10 turnovers. It's a WNBA record in your debut of 10 turnovers. The old record, I think, was Cynthia Cooper with 8. So she had 10 turnovers. It was an ugly game, an ugly shooting game. She still ended up leading her team in scoring. I don't know. Well, it certainly says we know she can hit shots, but also I think it might say something about the rest of her team. Remember, this is a team that hasn't made the playoffs since 2015. So there's going to be a whole lot of growing pains, not only for her, but
they've had the number one overall pick 2 straight years. That's usually not a good basketball team.
Nope. It is not. So it is going to be growing pains all around. I certainly am not going to go down the road of saying she's a bust by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a different ball game, man. And she is, I'm sure she knew that, but until you get there and until you find out, until you see that person in the different color jersey that is never more than 6 inches away from you, hounding you on the court everywhere you go, everybody trying to pick you apart, until you experience that, you're not really sure what the experience is going to be, and she found out in game one.
Not enough people are talking about 20 points, 10 turnovers is a double-double.
Okay.
See? There we go. It's all about how
Glass
you want to
half
spin
full.
it right now, and I'm sure plenty of people will today. So that is going to be interesting. A big shout-out, by the way, to who might be my new favorite player now, and Dejanay Carrington, who was one of the people that put the cuffs on Caitlin Clark last night. Dejanay Carrington, who last time on Dragon Ball Z when we were talking about the WNBA charters, was the one that pointed out and tweeted, the only downside of chartering now is how many Delta Sky miles I'm going to miss out on going forward. That's a real flyer, and real flyers know. And then last night after the game, she talked about during the contest, she had some cramps that popped up, and she said, that's on me, got to hydrate better, need less coffee. Here I am, Lord. It is I, Lord. I have heard you calling in the night. And Dejanay Carrington, part of a Connecticut Sun team that was third in the WNBA in defense last year, showing off last night. Big night around the league in general. You had the Las Vegas Aces, Dad, getting their rings at their ceremony last night. Back-to-back champions there. And we've talked about A'ja Wilson, the multiple-time WNBA MVP of the league, and someone who has been receiving a lot more of the accolades publicly in terms of the financial stuff, signature shoe deal, amongst other things in the recent days. She comes right out of the gate as the Aces defeat the Phoenix Mercury in game one. A'ja Wilson, 30 points off the rip here, just reminding everybody that, yes, on a night we were all excited to see Caitlin Clark, there is still clearly one top dog in this league, and it is A'ja Wilson.
Yeah, it is. 30 points, as you mentioned, 13 rebounds, 5 assists, had herself a monster game. So, we'll see. I don't think there's been a WNBA season going into with this much hype. So if this Fever team does not do well and Caitlin Clark does struggle until she catches her bearings, and again, they're on national television 36 of 42 times, what effect is that going to have? Because the WNBA is trying to really jump on this right now, and it's been great for the women with the charter flights, commercials, the airtime that they're getting in those commercials. So this is a great time for them, but a lot of it is going to be focused not on the back-to-back winners, the Aces in Vegas, but on Caitlin Clark and this class coming in, again, led by Caitlin Clark, and just when it is, if and when that may die down because of the play.
I think that's why last night was probably a good level set. It was a reminder of what the reality is and the difficulty coming into this league and how competitive it is and the grown folks you're going against, to where now, listen, we remember Victor Wembanyama struggled out of the gate in the NBA, a guy with infinite physical gifts. Caitlin Clark comes into this certainly less physically gifted overall relative to her peers, but we even saw within the body of that game last night, Dad, got more comfortable as the game went on. I thought she seemed to be being purposely deferential. They talked about her coach expressing they want her to make quick decisions here, not stick with the ball too long. She was trying to get other teammates involved, I think out of respect for coming in as a rookie. And I think as the season goes along, we'll see her find her comfort level. She's got a co-star in Aaliyah Boston who's better than any player that she's ever played with. No disrespect to everyone that she played with and the great teams at Iowa, but Aaliyah Boston's another former number 1 overall pick and college player of the year. And I think once she settles in, we'll see her get more comfortable sooner than later.
I absolutely agree. I think Caitlin Clark was trying to defer a lot, trying some passes trying to get into tight places that just weren't working. So I completely agree. I think she'll find her level. She's a great shooter, and we're going to see that. They're going to find ways, and everybody knows her way is going to the left and popping that shot, and that's what defenses will try and stop. But she's going to find her level, and I think her level is still going to be pretty damn high.
And we'll see if that level is on Thursday. She mentioned the home opener in Indiana, gonna be a movie. But coming up next, speaking of shows, one man filled with regret over a very lucrative TV appearance from this last weekend. Next on GoJo and Golic. All right, guys, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, the third, 3 quick stories to send everyone off into the rest of their day. As always, download, subscribe, rate, review our show. Leave us a 5-star rating and try and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern when you can on the DraftKings Network. You can also catch the best of GoJo and Golic if you missed that, noon to 1 p.m. Eastern, wherever you hear VSiN on the radio. And if you can't catch it in any of those places here and you want to hear our great guests, shout out to Nate Tice, great Yahoo Sports football analyst, and Matt Barrie, ESPN SportsCenter host down at Valhalla Country Club covering the PGA Championship this week. You can check all that out wherever you get your podcast or right here on YouTube as soon as we get done with the show. Speaking of great guests, you can also check out coming up Friday on the show, Big Papi, David Ortiz, Red Sox legend, kind enough to stop by and kick it with us there. Excited to see how he weighs in on the football versus basketball debate and where baseball can slot into this entire ordeal here. Something tells me he'll have something good for the people. So very much looking forward to that there. And I know Emerson and the rest of our Boston-based studio going to be fired up to have Big Papi back there and doing his thing. Guys, speaking of Boston area legends, though, let's get to this. Tom Brady coming out here and I guess unsurprisingly saying, yeah, I feel bad about my kids having to watch that entire roast and hear their mom get slandered left and right, the divorce get talked about, says that he regrets doing the roast and didn't like the way it affected his kids. Dad, I'm sure much like when we talk about the thing. Now, listen, money's no object for the Brady family at this point. Money's not everything. Right. And I was kind of thinking about them a lot during this roast that, man, it would kind of suck to have to go and see your parents talked about like this, talking about each other like this, all this laid out there. There's a difficulty in having your life and the private parts of it all laid bare in the public that I can certainly empathize with. That being said, getting $30 million to go up there and do that for about an hour and a half will probably ease some of the sting of that.
Yeah, he makes a lot of money, but getting handed $30 million. And again, he gave everybody up there some money to their charity, but still he made tens of millions of dollars. I'm sure that made him a little wide-eyed. Did he just, and here's what I don't know. And listen, I go back again to the much lower part of this when Greeny and I were roasted in Atlantic City. Actually, Jeff Ross was the host there as well as the host of this. And we had some other people there as well. That's when I also learned that other people get roasted before you roast the people you're supposed to be roasting, like Tom Brady or me and Greeny, but everybody else was getting roasted as well. So, we kind of sat there all shocked at some of the stuff that was being said. So I don't know if it's did Tom not know it would be this bad? Because I think it was the confluence of circumstances where, as I said the day after, these comedians were just so happy to be able to say whatever they wanted and nothing was off limits because it had kind of been that way since COVID and the cancel society out there. That I don't know if Tom knew it was going to be this bad.
The minute you see that Jeff Ross is part of it, who is now the modern day roast master, like, you should know it's not going to be pleasant. It's going to be hilariously mean. You could also tell there were a lot of people out there who have never heard of Dean Martin before. Like, when people were reacting to everything on Twitter, I'm like, for crying out loud, kids these days have no idea what a real roast is. That was a real roast. Tom Brady needed smarter people around to tell him, hey, dude, just so you know, this isn't like going up there until a little chicken crosses the road joke. These are mean and they are pointed.
I mean, listen, let's not act like so this is the two things I'm trying to reconcile in my head is on one side, you could absolutely have me believe that Tom Brady, in his infinite and so single-minded pursuit of sports greatness, was probably so shut out from the rest of the world that he just missed what roasts were when they were popular about a decade ago and on Comedy Central every night. You could sell me on that. But Tom Brady is also one of the most infinitely well-prepared human beings on planet Earth. That extended to his set here, where it looked very well-rehearsed and very practiced, and also included Tom Brady making a 9/11 joke. Like, we can't act like Tom Brady walked into this feeling like he wasn't ready for the smoke when he went after the 9/11 terrorist attacks as part of his bit at the end of this roast. So I struggle with all of that. I'm not surprised, though. It's different when it's your family. No one actually went after his kids. They talked about his wife and his divorce. But this is one of those things, yes, this is kind of what you sign up for when you sign up for a roast of this caliber. So let's move on and get to that. What, Dad, do you have something else here?
I was just going to say the only one in our family who wouldn't have minded anything being said would have been Sydney, because she knows she would have got a part of that $25-30 million.
Yeah, it's for real.
Exactly. Yes, she knows where her bread is buttered on that. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. Speaking of bread, let's get to some new cheddar going out here, Emerson, and get to that. Kelsey Plum, one of the latest WNBA stars, making a bunch of good money in deals off the court.
Yeah, for sure. After winning back-to-back WNBA finals, Kelsey Plum, she smoked cigars at the championship parade. Now ahead of her season opener, she launched her own exclusive cigar with Kingmakers. So that is coming this summer. And then also I just discovered Under Armour is making a WNBA Kelsey Plum, like a cigar-inspired All the Smoke shoe as well.
Wow. Yeah, Kelsey Plum right now, certainly one of the people on top of the world. Those images of her from the Aces victory parade, iconic, looked cool as hell. And so now, Dad, we've seen this last week, we've seen a lot of these deals coinciding with the start of the WNBA season, getting announced, launching at that same time, a bunch of really good positive momentum. And Dad, listen, as someone, you are a veteran, I've always said at Radio Row, there are very few people in the history of this industry that have hawked product as well as you. It's nice when it works out that something you're genuinely interested in becomes something that people will give you for free.
Yeah, you tend to talk about it much more comfortably because it's a product that you use. And like you said, for a lot of the WNBA players, they're hitting it right now where their faces, their images, their commercials are all coming out at the start of the WNBA season. That's a good ploy, a good marketing ploy, obviously, because the games are high profile right now. She's had some interesting times with her recent divorce and, back into the single world, and now some of the products that she's endorsing. So she's riding pretty high right now.
Yeah. And Kelsey Plum and the defending champion Las Vegas Aces starting off their season on a strong note, even though by their standards, the offense didn't necessarily look the way they wanted to. Everything else coming up Aces right now, pun fully intended. Guys, let's get to the third, though. Speaking of product placement here, interesting parlay on the DraftKings Sportsbook, and an always interesting debate about when or not to cash out, Emerson.
Yeah, so Wayne Shelton has been a viral sensation in sports betting circles over the last week since he made public a 3-leg parlay bet that was one leg away from winning $1.7 million. Dudes, this was a $100 bet originally. All he needed was the Oklahoma City Thunder to win an NBA championship. So the first 2 legs cash, Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl, Texas Rangers World Series title. So after seeing the Thunder tie their series with Dallas at 2 games apiece, Shelton decided he had seen enough. He cashed out his DraftKings ticket for just over $80,000. Again, huge profit over his original $100 bet. So gentlemen, would you have cashed out, or would you have decided to let it ride?
Listen, I'm not in his world. He said he's a single dad with a kid, so the 80,000 was going to do him well. At one point, it was worth over $100,000. I think when OKC won Game 1. Mm-hmm. Now, I mean, everybody's in different positions. I would have, without question. This is like the show Deal or No Deal.
Yeah.
You hang on to this thing, and every win Oklahoma City has, that money goes higher. I think Oklahoma City is winning this series against Dallas. So it's very easy to sit on the outside, Mike, looking in, saying I would have waited. But imagine if they won that series before the conference finals, probably against Denver, we think, the number would have been a lot higher that he could have cashed out on, but he would have had to go through the rest of this series. Very easy to say I would have hung on to it, but kudos to him for grabbing $80,000, I guess.
Yeah, like you said, he's got the kid to factor into this, and so I understand and respect that, but the inner degenerate in me just wants to go, you got to at least let this thing ride out till the conference finals, man. You've made it this far with that kind of payout on the other side. I'm getting hyped up just thinking about it. My blood pressure just spiked, and now I got to go to the damn dentist here. What an absolute rush that's had to be every step of the way. The first 2 legs hitting alone, but then Oklahoma City going and having the season that they've had, and the way that's got to hype you up. There are very few things that can do that. We hope that this podcast is one of them. If it does hype you up in that same way, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review it, leave us a 5-star rating. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.